Okay, this is the Speed Hillclimb Challenge Part 8, the final part of what I'm going to do, because it's started from a box of bits and actually score points. So this is an interview with James Baxter, the pilot of cars. So I'm here at the home of Tip Top Engineering in Huddersfield with James. First met James at Hillclimb Classic and Vintage on the 8th of June 2014 when he was driving ERA R4A. And after that meeting he actually gave me his card and says come across, as I live not a million miles away, to take some photographs of a couple of ERAs that he had in the garage that week. And then since then I've just actually helped him with the racing days when I can, and actually do a little bit of tinkering about with him. Of course he's got a new guy now, Jack Bond, from near Bolton over the border. So yeah, it's all go there. So the cars that you've owned and driven in the past, I know for a fact, I can't remember half of them, but I'm sure you can tell me a few of them that you've raced or owned.
It began with Austin Sevens, as many did, but soon on to Fraser Nash's, two-seater Meadows engine Fraser Nash, won the VSCC Lyset Best All-Rounder with that. And then a single-seater Fraser Nash, the ex-Guy Smith Norris Nash with 3.5 litre Alvis engine. My dad owned it for a start and I was lucky enough to be able to drive it, and then eventually I bought it from my dad and carried on and broke a few more records. In fact, broke every hill climb and speed record that there was going in the VSCC and held them all at one time. And I think it still holds them all, still holds the class records everywhere. It's just had some of the overall records beaten by myself driving other cars, to be honest, so they're all as good as stand. Not quite.
And I believe you drove a D-type Jaguar in a race, didn't you?
Yeah,
a long time ago.
That's my famous bit. I drove Peter Newmark's D-type OKV1, the car that came second at Le Mans in '54, I think.
Right.
We had a lovely time in 2010. Peter very kindly asked me to drive it with him, and we won Grid 2, I think they called it, narrowly pipping Mr. Webb and Alex Buncombe and a couple of other people.
Right.
So that was really sweet. Yeah. Really cool. And I drove Bill Inscoe's D-type a little bit as well, and I also drove Peter's Monza Alpha as well as Bill Inscoe's Monza Alpha. Lots of Bill's 8C Alphas. What else? A Chrysler for Bill Inscoe, a Delage for John Ward, and then I ran out of anywhere to go really, and I'd heard that David Hawkins was looking for someone to sort of share with him in this Riley that I'm looking at now, and I thought, well, there'll be loads of people wanting to drive that for him. Anyway, when I rang him 2 months later, nobody had contacted him, so I was very grateful and we got on well, and unfortunately living at opposite ends of the country. But we got around all the problems and started off with the Pomeroy Trophy at Silverstone. Didn't have a luggage rack and spare wheel holder, but if I had I would have won that, which I have won previously in a Fraser Nash, but I'm going against script here a bit, aren't I? I'm jumping the script. But anyway, so that's how David and I got it together with this Riley. This is ERA powered, so it's got enough puff to go, in fact it's called Puff by David Hawkins, he calls it Puff, to go and play with ERAs and beaten them on a few occasions. And this now holds the Lowton Park hill climb record, and Kerborough and Long Course Prescott. And this next season we're hoping to add, I'll say a couple more to it, and then I've not pinned my hopes up to the fence quite yet. But Shelsley Walshy should do well, and I've not had it at Harewood Hillclimb yet for the classic meeting, so that would be really good to get that one. So it's going to be mainly this next year a season of doing the Riley, but I might also go along to a couple of British events and enter the new Cup class, which is for pre-1971 racing cars, because I think it'd be quite groovy in that. Maybe encourage some more pre-war people to go and have a play, but also an excuse to go in a slightly slower car than the Gould, as I go and play at new hills like Gerst and Doon. So the Gould is having probably an engine rebuild. I do all my own fettling and everything in on the car prep, and so I've rebuilt a couple of ERA engines. I thought, why not do the Gould engine? It's done the whole of my time with it, the whole of Tony Wiltshire's time, the previous owner. So it's getting ready. There's nothing wrong with it, but I just feel I ought to go inside and have a look at it. So that will take probably half the season by the time, because I might also change the injectors and see if it'll run on methanol as well, which would be quite good.
Right. So would you say that, going back to the Riley, obviously it's a manual gearbox with an ERA engine in. You have driven R4D and the R4A, possibly others, I'm not sure. Would you say that the pre-selector gearbox would give you a little bit more
Very interesting.
time?
Before I'd ever driven a pre-selector, I was slightly nervous of sort of how to drive one, really, because I'd never even driven one in a road-going Riley or anything. So I jumped into an ERA, and the gearbox was as much to get used to as the rest of the car. But I have to say that it's a blooming delight. It's lovely. You feel like you're cheating a little bit because you can change gear wherever you want, having pre-selected it. So going around, for example, Pardon Hairpin at Prescott, you've got the gear pre-selected, you just put your pedal down and the next one comes back up, so it's lovely. I was a bit disappointed when this Riley only had a manual gearbox in it, but they say they're a bit light. It is a bit lighter. They're easier to build than a pre-selector. I spent an awful long time building the one that's in R4A, a lot of time and effort to make it as frictionless as possible, which can be done. And I am tempted that this car should have one in it, but it is what it is for now. Maybe one time in future I might alter it.
Yeah.
But it's a dog box on third and fourth, and it's still a synchromesh on first and second, which is a bit awkward because David raced it mainly, I've hill climbed it mainly. I'm into first gear on occasions, down into second a lot. So yeah, I do secretly wish it was pre-selected.
Yeah. But having said that, with some stiff opposition, obviously from R4D at times, and Nick Topless driving that, you have it come out on top.
Yeah.
And obviously Ian Baxter in the Alta, which none of these cars are slow, so you must be doing something right.
Yeah, it's going all right. Yeah, Ian's on a similar pre-selector gearbox to the ERAs. He's going very well, is Ian. All self-fettled, driving his own car. Nick's in a borrowed car. You drive a borrowed car just a tiny bit differently to your own.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everyone that drives that car especially drives it with a huge amount of respect. You tend to look after your neck first, though, in a dangerous car like that.
Yeah.
And that's what sort of makes you lift off, wins first, rather than the value of the car.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas when you're in the Gould, it's more about expense of your front wing, to be honest.
Yeah. Right, well, we'll go on to the Gould anyway. So the Gould was a GR55 2.5 litre Cosworth Opel engine, and basically it was bought as a box or two of bits, and people that have looked on the Speed Hillclimb Challenge, that's when I started filming all the bits, and we put it on just to show people how it started life. And
in this very garage?
Floor pan were in a mess, and a lot of other bits.
I glued the non-stressful bits back together myself and had the professional bits done, well, the important bits done professionally. Sorry the Gould's in my other garage at the moment, but the nose is down there. But it's nearly in one piece from last season.
So of course, for those of you who don't know, it was an ex-Tony Marsh and Tony Wiltshire car. And the first hill climb with the Gould that he had was the 16th of September 17th at Harewood. That was just like a trial run, but I can remember you being really chuffed with it, and a lot of expletives. With the joy of having something different from a Riley or a Fraser Nash.
I've done a lot of whooping in my helmet. That has to be said. So it was nice that the Gould first time ever did my best time ever in an ERA up Harewood. Within a second it was the same time, so it literally felt like I was picking up where the ERAs left off.
Yeah.
Which was pretty cool.
Really good. And then of course on to the very local to here, Scammon and Dam Hillclimb, just off the M62. And on the 18th of August 2018, on your second run, you broke a 43-year-old outright hill record, which was previously held by hill climber Roy Lane, himself a champion for several times.
Yeah.
And I can remember seeing him at Harewood myself in the 70s and 80s. Yeah, so that was in a Formula 5000 Chevrolet McRae GM1, and the record he set then was 21.97 seconds, and you gradually got the record down to 21.26 on that day.
Thanks to Dave Tatham for
yeah,
giving me a good run for my money.
Yeah, David Tatham also.
Had it if I hadn't have...
Yeah, you just managed to pip him to the actual first beating, which I'm sure you're pleased about. But
it always spurs you on when you've got someone to scrap with.
But David was right on your heels. I can remember that.
Fair play.
You know, I can't remember his time, but it was quite close. He actually broke the previous record as well, but after you broke it.
You just needed to get up a bit earlier.
Yeah. So that was a good day with that. So yeah, and then a year later, on the 21st of July 19, we went there, and unfortunately times seemed to be getting a little bit slower, and then we realised that you're having problems with the onboard battery.
Yeah, I had a mild misfire. Scammondin, fair play to Scammondin, they give you loads of runs, but then I realised that I hadn't got any way of charging my batteries up, so I snaffled off too much electricity, so being as it's so close, I nipped home. By the time I got back to Scammondin, which isn't far away, they'd all done another 2 runs which is Scammondin, but I bobbed in a couple at the end and just managed to nudge the record on a little bit more.
Yeah, so that actually brought it down to 21.12, and obviously that record stands at the minute unless we can get any more big cars. You know, come and bring your car to Scammondon. You know,
brilliant.
Don't be frightened, and give James a bit of competition.
Yeah, we like it.
And then back to Harewood now. On the 11th and 12th of May, Saturday, Sunday weekend in 2019 was your first sort of British Championship event. And you were actually really chuffed to score a point.
I would have been happy. I entered the championship thinking this might be a waste of money, to be fair. But, you know, my times weren't too bad the previous season, and I thought I've got a chance of getting in the runoff, possibly. And I would have been very happy coming away with a 0, as it were, for being 11th or 12th in the runoff. But Jonathan Varley or Robert Kenrick, I think, had a bit of a moment, so it nudged me on a place, and I came away with 1 point. So I was chuffed to bits with that, unbelievably chuffed for my first attempt.
Yeah, and I can remember, again, you coming back, and when you actually knew you got a point, that were it.
Oh, mega. For me, it felt like I won the British Hillclimb Championship.
Yeah, there and then. Well, I don't think he did bad anyway. I mean, he got 10 points last season, and it actually put you in 22nd place.
Yeah.
Which was the first goal season from, you know, after the building up of all the bits and getting used to driving something which, you know, not being a driver, I wouldn't know. Totally different from the Riley.
It's a different league.
You know, everything about it. And I know he fitted paddle shift to it, and we give it a test.
Yeah, the paddle shift is like your pre-selector gearbox.
Yeah,
Riley.
so
you feel like you're cheating, really.
Yeah, but everybody's got it, so it's a must, really.
Yeah. So I have to say, I don't feel the same about launch and traction control yet. I'm living without those.
Yeah.
But I'll open those cans up when I need to, as and when.
That's right. Yeah.
But at the moment, I'm driving it on the seat of my pants.
Yeah.
Feeling it really, and
literally, because I know you don't like a lot of padding on you around you. You like
no seat in the Gould whatsoever. Cause I don't think I could fit one in. But a few people have said, "Oh, you'd be more comfortable and drive it better." But I'm hard. And
Yeah.
the bum is hard down to the car,
Yeah.
so I'm listening to everything the car's saying to me.
Yeah.
And if you feel everything and it's talking to you, so you don't want to mask it out.
Anyway, he got you the St John's Ambulance Trophy for the best newcomer this year, which is just in front of you.
This one here, yeah.
Yeah.
There's some names on here that I'm really proud to be associated with, and many of them have gone on themselves to win the British Hillclimb Championship.
Yeah.
So, not that I expect to do that, but I'm touched and privileged. Ironically called the St John's Ambulance Trophy because it was one of the meetings where Jeff wasn't able to make it with me.
Yeah.
Never have had a moment in the car, it's been because Jeff wasn't there,
Yeah.
funnily enough.
Yeah.
But I ended that meeting in a St John's ambulance, which I think is just by coincidence. I had a little moment going around the museum and hurt my hand, but thank you very much to all the marshals and St John's ambulance for looking after me.
Well, that's right. So, of course, through the year you've done some trialling in the big Chrysler that you've got, which isn't here, like, but it's kept on to it. Yeah. So you'd be all the family bouncing about in that, getting covered in mud.
Yep.
And
that's highly recommended as well.
Yeah. I'm sure you enjoy it, and I know Jack Bond, who's
he's
James
pretty keen as well, and a Bulldog Morris.
So, and he has actually raced at Cadwell. Saw him at Cadwell recently. So
Jack's a very welcome addition to the business, and he's really, really good and dedicated, knows his cars. So lucky to have him with me.
Yeah. And anyway, 2018, you got the Brighton Speed Trials Class C13. It's his pre-31st December 58. So why they didn't say pre-59 cars, I don't know. But anyway, fastest time in the Riley ERA of 12.79 seconds for the standing quarter mile, which, if you look and compare it with some modern cars, that is pretty quick for a car that's sort of 1930s technology. But there you go. And then, of course, Chateau Impney last year was... it seems to be now that it might be the last possibly one there.
Yeah,
it's cancelled for next year. I've looked on the website and seen things.
But terribly sad if we don't go to Chateau again. I drove R4D at the first meeting and got fastest ERA then, and I'm pretty sure that still stands to this day, 5 meetings further on. But apart from me, Ian Baxter beat it in the Alta, and then I've just beaten Ian Baxter again in the Riley, so I think I've got fastest ERA, fastest pre-war car, and then last year I really confused myself by taking 2 cars, took the Gould as well, and I think that might hold the unofficial Chateau record.
Outright record, yeah. Well, the pre-war outright record stands at 42.99s. Again, like I say, beating strong opposition, R4D, Ian's, Alta, and of course the demonstration, and we've found out now that the time was 35.27 seconds with the Gould.
Yeah, thanks Charlie for telling me that. It's unofficial, so it doesn't count for anything, but there's a lovely video of the Gould there.
If you look on, obviously people who are on Leodis 55 on YouTube can see the in-car runs there.
It was a run making sure I didn't have any moments.
Yeah.
Because they had a lawnmower, had a bit of a crack on here, and it takes a lot of time. I was there demoing only, not for time.
Yeah.
I give it a bit of stick.
I'm sure it were good for the crowds to see anyway, something different. So, 2020 plans, as you've sort of mentioned. I mean, this car, the Riley ERA, is one of the best sounding cars. I love it.
It's pretty good. It's sat down with an open pipe as well. You should hear it with a full bore. It's lovely.
Yeah.
We've got to run silence on the hills, but it's a bit dusty at the minute. It's ready for a clean.
Yeah.
It's about ready for the season. Otherwise, not a lot to do. Pour some oil in. I might fit a preheater to it just to look after the engine a bit so it doesn't wear itself out warming up. And I might put some different gear ratios in it. And I might put some skinnier tyres on it as well to look nicer. But that's in the pipeline.
I don't know whether that'll make it look better or worse, but we'll see when that happens.
I fear it might slow it down a little.
Yeah. But it's well, one of my favourite cars anyway. It's I just love this. Well, my favourite engines are straight sixes, especially when they're supercharged.
Absolutely.
And
this car is so well engineered by David Hawkins.
yeah,
I've just finished off what he did brilliantly. So I think it's probably the first one I admit he was not the driver, but my goodness, was he the feckler. And he's built an absolutely brilliant car, and I've just tickled it along to keep it going and altered the suspension and handling a little bit, and pedalled it, and it's a brilliant motor car, and road going as well, road registered, and yet go and give the ERAs well more than a run for the money.
yeah. So we will be seeing more of this ERA, Riley ERA anyway, this year. Sorry, and possibly the Gould, depending on what happens when we get developing that and sorting out. But
Yeah,
in the meantime, you've got to earn a crust
indeed.
in between all this. So
Back to it. Speaking of, we better get back to it.
yeah. So we'll see you again.
Thanks for watching.
And tip top.
Thank you very much.
Bye.